the idea that the lobby is the American population. I think that the problem here is that the Republicans are sort of trying to split the Democratic Party, right? I mean, of course, you have traditionally very strong Jewish voter presence in the Democratic Party, and I think the Republican candidates for president are trying to sort of outflank us in some respects. It's sort of a out-Jew the Jews in some. I mean, it's a terrible expression, but I think that they're trying to come so far to the right, and they are going back to again, we'll use the term cartoonish, but a caricature of what the Palestinian presence is, then that Palestinian is standing in for the idea of a terrorist. I mean, I think we're not talking about real people. We're not talking about peace, and we're not talking about a peace process. This is beyond a post-Oslo. In some respects, it's both casting backwards towards a time when there was a very clear setup between who was right and who was wrong, and Israel was under attack, and a kind of post-Oslo era where you've given up on the idea of a two-state solution, but you haven't come up with an alternative scenario. And all you're doing is kind of reinforcing the status quo, which Israelis know, and many Americans do too, even if they're not, completely up to speed on global geopolitical politics, that the status quo it's unsustainable, right? Maybe it's not going to end tomorrow, but sometime in the next decade, sometime within this generation, this occupation has to end, and what direction it will go in is not clear. And it is creating a scenario where it is undermining the gorgeous democracy of Israel, which is vibrant and strong and is important and is an ally of the United States. But the problem is that this uncomfortable and totally different situation in the West Bank is bleeding in to other parts of Israeli life. And I mean, we can talk about whether or not the anti-democracy sort of niggling pieces of legislation that went their way into the Knesset regarding free speech or these various issues that have happened recently, if people have been following it, around segregation of women in the Orthodox society in Israel. Are they connected to this situation? To some degree, yes. To some degree, no. But the fact is that the Republican Party is creating a situation where the Palestinian has become a cartoon, a caricature of a Palestinian terrorist that might be something out of, the movie Munich. It's not. It's not really about who the people are on the ground. It's not about what can happen going forward, and it's certainly not about advancing an idea for peace. I mean, what's remarkable about what each and every one of the Republican candidates has said is none of them have put forward an idea for peace. All of them have sort of enhanced it.
Good point. That's what Shmuel, I want to go to you about that. I mean, when you look at Israeli society, and needless to say, they understand what's going on the ground. I mean, they may have different political points of view, but I mean, how would an educated Israeli looking at the American campaign, these Republicans, and what they're saying about Israel, are they happy about it because it's obviously very pro-Israel, or is there a worry that such lack of knowledge could be a danger to Israel's national security at some point?
Well, that depends, of course, on the person to which you refer the question. I think most Israelis generally would be pretty happy with the support, even the fierce support they're getting from Republican presidential candidates. I don't think they really follow the day-to-day nuances or statements of the different candidates. But all in all, what Israelis see with these Republican candidates is that these candidates have realized or recognized the fact that all this talk about unsustainable situation or about the fact that we need to achieve peace now or tomorrow, all this talk that Israelis cease to believe in because they all think that achieving peace right now is not something that is really viable. They see within the Republican Party the kind of candidates that do understand the complications we have here and do understand
they certainly
the fact
don't say it in their campaign speeches at all.
More and more for achieving peace will not get us.
I could quote Rick Santorum.
Much closer
I have his quote
peace.
here. I mean, you can't say that he has any idea what he's talking about at all. As a matter of fact, when he talked later on CNN, he wouldn't even use dates because he doesn't even know the dates of the conflict. I mean, it's pretty extraordinary. I mean, Sarah, if I can go to you, I mean, is this the Republican, the GOP contenders? They've criticized Obama's foreign policy towards Israel, but I mean, for the most part, Obama has just said, "Please negotiate, just please." Okay, I mean, he's getting criticized for that. I mean, what could a Republican do that would move the peace process forward? Because the peace process has been dead for 20 years. What could a Republican do? I mean, just, you know, agree with the Israelis and have an expulsion of the West Bank? I mean, I'm being facetious. I'm being facetious here, but of course,
right,
I don't see how, in any way, shape, or form, Obama's been anti-Israel at all.
No, and I don't actually think that Israelis believe that either. I mean, I think that the question is, I mean, right, of course, Obama has, Ehud Barak himself said that he thought that the Obama administration had been the best on Israel in years. And I'm not sure that anyone would argue that George W. Bush did anything for the Israelis or for the peace process. And I understand what Shmuel is saying. The fact is that there is no clear path to peace right now. Yes, talks have fallen apart. But the fact is, until we sit down and discuss the issues that have been the issues on the table for decades, settlements, refugees, final status of Jerusalem, these issues aren't going away. And the Republican Party, it seems to me, is not advancing any kind of path towards peace or any kind of path towards ameliorating the status quo. All they're doing is sort of assuming and reaffirming the kind of dominance of Israel in the situation, which I don't see as helpful. It's certainly not helpful on an international stage. It's definitely not helpful for American foreign policy positions elsewhere or America's, you know, isolation or lack of isolation. And I ultimately don't know that it's all that helpful for Israel either, because just to have someone say, great, do it, you know, keep going where you're going, and we're going to move our embassy to Jerusalem to reaffirm the fact that Jerusalem is the eternal capital of the Jews, I'm not sure what that does other than sort of light a second match in a nation that doesn't need any more matches struck.
Shmuel, what do you think about that? I mean, if a Republican does come into power, and Mitt Romney, which, as we're speaking right now, we have the New Hampshire primary going on, and his first foreign trip is going to be to Israel. I mean, what in the world is he trying to, what does he want to accomplish? Okay, I mean, he's going to just say that, you know, we're going to restart, we're going to undo Oslo, we're going to go backwards, we're going to, I mean, what in the world could he possibly offer that wasn't already tried with the Bush people, and no one wants to give Obama a chance to have negotiations? I mean, he's given up too.
Well, first of all, he can offer the position that strong American support for Israel is the way forward, even for those wanting to achieve peace in the Middle East. Whenever Israel had strong support from Israel, Israel was tempted to move forward with the peace process, as happened with the with the second Rabin government in the early 90s. This is exactly what happened with the Ehud Barak government in the late 90s. When American support for Israel was strong and was unquestionable, Israel were much more willing to take risks for peace or for change, as Ariel Sharon did with the strong support he got from President Bush that made him withdraw all Israeli settlements and troops from the Gaza Strip. So this American position,
a lot of people would say that occupation hasn't come to an end. Not at all. Sarah, you want to jump in there?
But Shmuel, I mean, I agree with you, but how has Barack Obama done something different? I mean, the problem was there was, I don't see that the support for Israel has waned in any way.
Answer, I'll explain it to you. When Barack Obama started his tenure as United States president, his first action was to try and pressure Israel into freezing settlements. This signaled to Israel that this president is going to be different than his predecessors.
The settlements are illegal under international law. What's wrong with the president of the United States saying stop breaking international law? It doesn't make any sense.
Look, I understand that you do not agree with the policies of the current Israeli government, and I appreciate that. But to the Israeli public, this signaled lack of sufficient support on the part of the American president. It signaled a different president that might not be as strong on Israel or is not going to back Israel to the same extent that his predecessor, both the Republican President Bush and the Democratic President Bill Clinton, supported Israel. And the Israeli public and the Israeli government grew to distrust the current American president through different crises. I'm going to give Sarah the last word on this program. Sarah, you got 30 seconds. Go ahead.
I don't think this is a question of American lack of support or waning support for Israel. The fact is the Obama administration has done as much, if not more, than any other, and has pulled back and not enforced any type of settlement freeze, has pulled back and not had any kind of stick in a carrot and stick scenario. The problem is the status quo is untenable. And the Republican candidates pushing an idea that it is not helpful for Israel, and it's not helpful for the United States, and it's not helpful for global peace. It's not something that we should look towards as a model of what we should do going forward. The relationship between
Sarah,
Israel and the United States is
I'm going to have to jump in here. Very
strong.
interesting conversation, folks, here. Many thanks to my guests today in Washington and in Tel Aviv, and thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time, and remember, crosstalk rules.